is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Just another moment from tonight's at times fiery and at times cordial vice presidential debate between Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Republican Senator J.D. Vance. Now, as we enter the home stretch of the presidential election cycle, nationwide polling averages are showing Vice President Kamala Harris ahead of Donald Trump by just over 4%. It could all come down to who can claim battle victories in key battleground states. Joining me now to break down where the polls stand is Scott Tranter, Director of Data Science for Decision Desk HQ. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. Off the bat, right away, I want to get your takeaways and your thoughts on tonight's debate. How do you think the both candidates fared, and will it impact the polls at all?
Well, I was a little disappointed. Neither of them challenged each other to a game of golf or some sort of barbecue cook-off. It was very Midwestern nice. Debate. Exactly. Yeah, it felt like a 2012, 2008 debate when it was a little bit more civil for those of you. I guess I'm really aging myself now. That being said, here's what we learned from the last debate. The polls didn't move a whole lot, and it was mixed. I understand a lot of people thought Kamala Harris won that debate. Maybe she did, but the polls in the battleground states, she did a point better in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, but Donald Trump gained a point in Georgia and North Carolina. So that's a long way of me saying is I don't think this debate's going to change anything. One thing I will be looking at, there will be some polls that come out in the next week, and it'll be hidden in the crosstabs, and someone is going to ask, did you watch the vice presidential debate? And then they're going to cross it with someone who hasn't voted before. If you're a brand new voter, you don't really pay attention to politics, you might have caught a little bit of the last debate and you watched a little bit of this one. This is your first introduction to both candidates. You might be swayed by J.D. Vance's performance. That would be my thing. And that would be the one thing that may or may not switch it in a race that comes down by a couple, that might come down to a few thousand votes in a state. That might be the only difference we see there. And I would have said the same thing last debate. If you don't really pay attention to the race, you only watch a little bit of the debate, you probably came away thinking Kamala Harris was pretty good. But that's about it we're going to see. I don't think it's going to move any of the people who really pay attention to this or any of the hyper-partisan voters.
On that note, Scott, that's something I wanted to ask you about. There was an AP NORC poll that came out recently that said Tim Walz has a 42% favorability rating, while J.D. Vance had a 27% favorability rating. This debate was unique in the sense that it was sort of a moment for both vice presidential candidates to really introduce themselves on the national stage because they aren't very well known. Do you think that maybe it won't affect the horse race politics, but the favorabilities, do you foresee any movement after tonight?
Yeah, look, J.D. Vance's favorability was pretty low going into this, so it can only serve that he goes up a little bit. Does he reach where Tim Walz is? Probably not, but does he move up from 27? He probably does. One thing we have learned, though, since 2016, you can win the presidency without having a positive favorability rating. Both Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump in 2016 didn't have positive favorability ratings, and same thing in 2020. Now, this is the vice presidential debate, and these are vice presidential candidates, so a little bit different. But favorability, it may matter a little bit in fundraising, a little bit here, but it hasn't really translated to anything significant on votes the last two presidential elections.
And Scott, I want to bring in some current events. It was one of the first questions that was asked tonight. Hurricane Helene, which just ripped through southeast U.S. Over the past few days. Decision Desk HQ has for North Carolina has Trump ahead of Harris by 0.8 percentage points. It's 49 for Harris, 48.2% for Trump. North Carolina was the site of some of the most severe damage from Hurricane Helene. How do you see hurricane politics playing into the horse race in the lead up to November? And could the hurricane relief efforts at all help Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign?
So the hurricane in North Carolina could be the mini October surprise. And when I say mini, really affect North Carolina and Georgia voters. It might have effects on mechanics of how the early vote is conducted there. We're already seeing early vote sites delayed in North Carolina because of this as they're cleaning up. And obviously, if you live in those areas, northern Georgia, western North Carolina, you're very keen on what these candidates are going to say they're going to help you do because you're going to be dealing with this after the presidential election. In a close race like you just showed in North Carolina, it could absolutely affect it. The only question is how will it affect it? We'll have to wait for a couple weeks to see some polling, especially out of Western North Carolina. No polls are going on now as people are cleaning up, but it could move a few votes either way. And in a state that's going to be decided probably by a few thousand votes, could matter.
Scott, we've got time for one more question. I want to just turn back to the debate. I was texting with a number of House members during the debate to get their take, and this one message that I got from a House Democrat I thought was really interesting. They said, quote, "This is like a preseason football game. J.D. Vance is up 3 touchdowns, but none of it matters." Now, I'm a little hesitant sometimes to say debates don't matter after we saw what played out after the first presidential debate between Biden and Trump, obviously Biden then stepping out. But at the end of the day, this was potentially the last time, likely the last time, both campaigns are going to go head-to-head on a debate stage. Will it move the needle at all? We're a little over 30 days out. Any changes after tonight, do you think?
My prediction is no. And I'm just basing it off the last movement we saw, lack of movement we saw after the last debate. I will leave you with one prediction. I think there's going to be another debate before this is all said and done.
Wow. That is quite the prediction. All right. We'll have to leave it there. We'll have to see if that happens. Of course, right now on the books, there is that offer from CNN to debate on October 23rd. Vice President Kamala Harris has agreed to it. Former President Trump says he will not, but as any pastime Washington knows, it's the debate about the debates. Scott Tranter from Decision Desk HQ, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.